Welcome to the 14th season of the NitWits, a weekly roundtable discussion on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Our panel includes Neil Riddell of the Altoona Mirror, Mark Brennan of FightOnState.com, 1966 team captain Mike Irwin, and Casey Kantz of WTAJ Sports. The NitWits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just Ask Rental. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. Your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the NitWits on AltoonaMirror.com.
All right, good evening and welcome to the NitWits. Just one home game left, guys. Comes this weekend against Nebraska, and always at this time, we hear rumblings of Joe Paterno and his could be a possible final home game for him. Neil, we've talked about it before. We're talking about it again. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think it's a very distinct possibility this year, and even likelihood. Joe's not been on the field for a full game this year, and I think clearly he's in a lot of pain, more than he's probably really let on. And I think everybody ought to be ready for an eventual change to the guard. I'm saying after the bowl game.
Mark?
Yeah, I'm on record, and I think a lot of people are on record as saying that Joe Paterno has done so much for Penn State football, for the university, for the community. I live in State College. None of those things would be what they are without him, and he deserves to go out on his own terms. There's no question about that, and no matter what those terms are. Having said that, a lot of people are asking me, what do you think he ought to do? In my view, for his own health and safety, I do think maybe it's time for him to take a step away. Obviously, again, it's his choice. No question about that. But to me, he's been hurt so many times the last few years. Nobody wants to see him going out being seriously injured again. So, maybe this is the end. If it is, what a career he's had.
And, Mike, we don't know the way the final games are going to play out, but it has been a successful season to this point. And maybe to what Mark and Neil are saying, it's maybe good to go out on a high note like this.
Yeah, I'd echo Mark's remarks. I just happened to pick up the letters of the captains over the weekend, and I was reading through some of the comments that the captains made about Joe Paterno, and to the man, it's not all about the game of football. It's more about life and the lessons that Joe has taught everyone that has gone through that program. So, I would say hopefully Joe will know when his time is up and time to get out. And I think, obviously, at 85 years old, you got to be thinking a little bit about retirement. It's probably not in his mind right now. He said he's more focused on the football, and they have had a successful season, and we're happy about that. But and it would be. He always said he wanted to leave the cupboard full for the next guy to take over the program. So they have had some good recruiting years in the last couple of years, and it'd probably be an ideal time if he makes that decision. But I would say it's totally up to Joe, whatever he wants to do.
So we got to ask, what would that transition be like? We've heard rumblings of Urban Meyer possibly coming in. How easy or how difficult will this transition be, Neil?
Well, I think that really depends on Joe. I mean, I think if Joe embraces it and is willing to be a supportive part of the process, I think it could be very smooth. He's kind of made it clear that he doesn't want the focus on him, even though the focus has always been on him. He doesn't want a grand tour. He doesn't want a victory lap. So I don't think there'll be an announcement that this is his final home game or regular season game or even bowl game. I'm not sure, even though there'll be a lot of speculation in December. And I think there's probably behind-the-scenes positioning with the staff. He has said several times that he's concerned about the younger members of his staff. So I think it all depends on Joe as far as how smooth the transition can be.
Mark?
Yeah, I would agree with Neil that whenever it happens, I mean, it's going to happen sometime in the next few years, you would have to imagine. The key is going to be how Joe handles it. I mean, and I think he's going to do the right thing. He's done the right thing for Penn State so many times throughout his long, distinguished career that when it does come time to kind of turn over the reins to whomever it might be, I think he's going to do the right thing, give his blessing, and set this program continuing in the right direction. Been a great program for all these years. He built it, and I'm sure he wants to see it continue to be at the level that it's been, if not even higher.
Mike,
yeah, and that's the point. I'd like to look. This transition, and Urban Meyer's been kicked around a lot, but I mean, I'm not sure. The administration, how much effort they put into this hiring or what thoughts they put into it. I said on an earlier program, and I thought if they got a panel together, and including Graham Spanier and Tim Curley and maybe Steve Garbett as the head of the Board of Trustees, and Joe Paterno and maybe somebody else.
You, Mike, we nominated you for that.
Yeah. But it is key on who they hire because what Mark was saying about what he's done for that university, I mean, I don't think you just step in there and the type of individuals he's recruited and developed in that program. I mean, I think on a national basis, I mean, Penn State is probably second to none as far as well thought of programs and doing things the right way. So, I mean, you better make a good choice on this.
I would agree. The ideals that he stood for, the way he's done it, respect for the opponent. I mean, all the things that we've come to appreciate with Penn State football, not punching in, not rubbing the score, rolling up the score on other people, all the things, the good things that Joe has stood for, recruiting quality kids. I would hope that whomever that would be is going to carry on that torch. That said, Penn State has really slipped into pretty much the middle. I know they're 8-1 now. I know they're 5-0, but a lot of teams have caught up to them, and Nebraska is now in the league. We'll find out more about them this week. Penn State has a rebuilding challenge of sorts on their hand when the transition does come, and then they have a lot of empty seats as well.
Indeed, we'll talk about that actually coming up in a later segment. We got to get to a break, though. It's been a solid 9 weeks to this point. Penn State at 8-1, as Neil just said, and they're still perfect in the Big Ten. We'll ask the panel if this season has exceeded their expectations. That's on the way. Stay with us.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental.
I'm senior defensive tackle Devin Steele, and you're watching the Nitwits.
What a year for big number 71. Hey, the loss to second-ranked Alabama seems light years ago. Since then, Penn State's rattled off 7 straight wins, including a perfect 5-0 in conference play. I didn't really see it going this way, at least to this point. You guys, expectations-wise?
When you looked at the schedule before the season, I think there was you thought there was an opportunity that they could be where they are now. But after that Alabama game and the way they really struggled against Temple, just barely winning that, even though Temple, decent team, I know a lot of people were wondering, are they even going to finish with a winning record? I guessed 8-4 before the season, and that could still happen. I think they're going to win 1 or 2 of these remaining games, but they have definitely pulled together, found a way to win. It's been amazing to watch, and it's been a fun team. It's become a fun team to watch, and that it could be maddening at times, but also they make plays in the clutch. So it's good for them.
After that Alabama loss, you still had Iowa on the schedule. You had Illinois, who had obviously the 6-0 start to the year. Those were a couple that I didn't think we saw this team winning at that point. So, Neil, exceed your expectations so far?
Not quite.
No.
I mean, I thought I picked 8-4 also, and these next 3 are going to, I think, define the season. Their poise, their ability in the clutch, and their defense and Farah have exceeded my expectation. Their offensive operation has not. And, you know, there's still, Joe met the media this week on the Big Ten conference call. There wasn't a press conference. He's still talking about playing Bolden. So I don't know how that bodes at all for this next week's game.
Yeah, I want to get into that in a little bit too. But Mike, expectations-wise?
Well, going back, I mean, in the first show, we should run the tape of the first show because I said 9-3.
People can't get enough.
I'm still a little nervous. I'm a little nervous about the 9-3 because I think we're going to be looking at 3 real tough opponents in the next 3 weeks with Nebraska and Ohio State and Wisconsin. So there are 3 marquee programs and would be a challenge in any year. But I think, like Mark said earlier, I think we all thought they'd get through the front part of this schedule. There weren't too many teams on that schedule that were really going to come up and beat us. I mean, outside of maybe the Iowas and the Purdues or some people there. But I think for the most part, with looking at the schedule, I think most people would have picked them about this position.
They're fortunate to be 8-1.
Yeah, so 8-1, 7 straight wins, 5-0 in conference play. You got 3 games left: Nebraska, Ohio State, Wisconsin. But to this point, how have they gotten to that point? What guys have stepped up? I think Gerald Hodges, obviously Devin Still, Anthony Fair. The kicking game was horrible to start the year. Remember that? And Fair has come on like out of nowhere, taking double duties out. What guys have really stepped up at this point in your guys' eyes?
Well, I would say Jordan Hill also.
Jordan Hill?
I mean, he's been a great compliment to Devin Still. Stanley, I think, has played very well, and I think their secondary, particularly their safeties, have looked good.
I think Silas Redd has been, you know, we've obviously talked about the defense, but Silas Redd has been everything that we thought he would be. I think, you know, kind of understated. The offensive line really struggled at the beginning of the year, and as the year has gone on, started to pick it up. Now, in the last game, did not play a great game. How much did the weather have to do with the offense struggling? But I think we have to give the offensive line some credit. They deserved criticism early in the year, but I think as they've gotten better, you've seen Silas Redd start to churn out more and more yards.
Mike, who's
so when you're a winner, it's easy to be complimentary, you know. And I would say, I mean, we touched about everybody on the team. I think everybody on that team has almost exceeded expectations. Now, probably going forward, the biggest question mark on that team, I think, has to be the quarterback because I don't know if either quarterback has played great, but McGloin obviously has played well enough to win the game. So going forward, I think the big challenge for McGloin is how he handles the pressure in these 3 big games coming up, so it'll be interesting to watch.
Mike loves subliminally previewing the next segment too. He's
I
so
think
good at that.
Yeah, Moy also has meant a lot to them.
Yeah.
Lifted them up against Illinois late in the game, and I think I think Davon Smith has been improving as the season's gone on.
Sure. When we come back, as Mike alluded to, the other side of this discussion, and that is guys who still need to step up in these final games. We'll tell you who we think coming up next.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs.
Now back to Nitwits. A roundtable look at Nittany Lion football.
Oh, always a fun time here on the Nitwits. Welcome back to the show. We talked about last segment some guys that are really just having phenomenal years. But there are 2 sides to every discussion, and this time we're going to talk about guys we want to see more from. We mentioned quarterbacks, Rob Bolden, he's a big one, even Matt McGloin a little bit. Offense as a whole has just had some struggles, and it kind of starts with the quarterbacks. I also think, you know, some receivers dropping some passes. You know, Justin Brown's had some drops. Stuff like that. Who do we want to see more from this final stretch here, Mike?
If I could start,
go
that's
ahead.
exactly my thoughts. Where some guys dropping some. Davon Smith, I think, as well as he played in some games, still hasn't been able to catch the ball well. And Zerba at the tight end position, I think, had a couple motion penalties and some things. So I question, you know, some of those things. Although I think Smith has been improving all along, and again, the question mark on McGloin. But,
Sure.
Yeah, this is 2 straight years that they've gotten very, very little from their tight ends, and they had a run there with Corliss and Schuler where they had 2 guys who were as good as anybody in the Big Ten. I'm not sure what is going on there. You know, I know they lost Gilliam, but Happily looked like he had some things going right, but they really have to pick it up in that area, if not for the end of this season, then moving forward. And I think they have to settle on a quarterback, and I've said it before. I mean, it's got to be McGloin. Just give him the ball and let him play.
You can't afford it now. You asked who do we want to see more from? We need more from Bolden. We don't want to see more from Bolden this year. Right. I mean, nothing against him personally. This staff has bent over backwards, to be fair to him. I believe that. I think that it would be best for him to really, watch, take the pressure off himself, and see where it stands next year. You mentioned Justin Brown. I think he's had a decent season, especially when Moy was out, but he did drop a couple balls this last week. He was a little shaky on punt returns.
It seems we did talk a lot about the mistakes though early in the year. You can't make these mistakes against some of these good teams. They have seemed to at least get into more of a flow. Even though Joe's been in the box the majority of the year, it seems that the communication is at least a little bit better these last couple games, though.
Yeah, they didn't. I mean, they had to call 3 timeouts in their first possession
remember
against
that?
Alabama.
Yeah, remember that?
Yeah, they've come a long way since then.
I guess so.
But they really have ironed out that, and I'm sure they've gotten used to Joe, and he's gotten used to being upstairs.
The bye week gives us a chance to maybe go off topic a little bit with the game coming up this week. And the STEP program was a hot topic this offseason and has still continued to be kind of a topic. Kind of shook things up for some season ticket holders. What were your thoughts on this whole new STEP program?
Well, I mean, I think they contracted with a ticket agency going forward for next year. Am I right about that?
I'm not sure about that.
I thought they put out a release that was it that IMG that specializes in some of these. So I think clearly they have 10,000 seats that look like they're unsold. So I mean that whether that ties into a coaching transition or not, we'll see. But I think that's clearly, you can't call yourself the greatest show in college football and then when they pull out to a wide shot have the holes in the crowd that they have.
Yeah, I think they realized that there was going to be some of that when they went into this program. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. This is something that should have been done 15, 20 years ago. And I think if they were able to implement it in stages or just more smoothly, it would have been a lot more palatable for the fans to deal with. Having said that, it's something they had to do. I know everybody talks about how much money Penn State sports makes, but if they want to have that broad-based program, they have to bring in a lot of cash. And where else are you going to see a situation where the people who are paying the most money are not getting the best seats? And that's what you have to reward people who pay the most money with the best seats.
I still have a tough time accepting the big increase that they asked. I went through my notes. I looked back. But Penn State was third in the country in profitability for a program. In football, they collected last year in 2010 $70 million, and they made $50 million, okay? And I know they have to support other programs down there, but you think they could have gradually stepped it up, being number 3 in the country. And I know Neil talks about the empty seats, but if you're inside that 40, it's costing you like $160 a ticket.
Right.
And they're selling those tickets on a game-to-game basis. You get a guy coming in there that's paying, $55 for that same ticket that these other people are paying a lot more for. I think in the long run it's going to hurt them. I think they alienated a lot of fans that maybe couldn't afford to step it up.
And that's all the more reason I think that there's going to be a real emphasis on, let's face it, they don't have the Eastern relationships anymore where you can get in the car and drive to West Virginia or Pitt and people are going to come up to see, the visitor isn't bringing that many people anymore. Unless it's for a huge game. And I think this is all part of the culture that has developed in big-time sports where it really is professional sports. What you're charging, the booing that you saw of Bolden, which is an unfortunate byproduct, but these people want to be entertained and they deserve to be entertained.
Yeah, the other thing to keep in mind, when we've heard, is Penn State going to be willing to pay what it needs to pay for a good, a top-flight, high-profile coach? I don't think they have a choice. I think they have to if they want to fill up those seats. I mean, I don't think they can lowball and not bring a premier person in there if that person happens to be available whenever Joe steps down.
Well, they certainly can afford it. I mean, they have enough money to hire anybody they want to hire. I mean, they have donors out there. The guy that gave for the hockey arena, $85 million or whatever the number was. So, it seems like a pittance to be paying a couple $1 million for a coach. with that type of.
Plus, if Mike
background.
gets a seat at the table of the search committee,
right.
that could be a big deal.
Maybe the new coach will invest his money.
Yeah.
With
Could you still
Irwin
do the Nitwits?
Financial is
Irwin
You
Financial.
pick
pony
the
up
coach.
for.
Could you still do the Nitwits? You'll rule that out.
Of course he will.
I wouldn't want to give up this great group
Exactly.
for any reason.
Guys, great discussion. Bye week officially over now. Nebraska coming in next. Final home game of the year. We'll break it down for you next.
The Nitwits are brought to you by J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday.
Hey, I'm Ali Agbu, and you're watching the Nitwits.
Everybody, come on. All hail the Nitwit of the week.
It wasn't mentioned on the last
It
show,
was
so
not.
we have to make
My
sure.
apologies. That's
His
my
dad will be
fault.
proud of him.
Casey's back.
I'm back. That's my fault. Nebraska and Penn State, of course, on the table next. And they've got the top rushing attack in the Big Ten. Neil, you are the Nitwit of the week, which means you will go first this week.
Thank you.
Thoughts and a prediction, please?
Yeah. Blind faith would lead me to pick Penn State, but they're 1-9 against the top 10 in the last 5 years, and that one win was at Ohio State when they punched the ball loose from Pryor. I know Penn State's defense has been great. I would love to see them win this game and take some momentum. And then this cloud that they may pay two quarterbacks. I'm going to say Nebraska 19, Penn State 16.
Mark?
Yeah, Penn State's been really good usually in these senior day games. Obviously, that wasn't the case last year. But if this has been a good group of seniors for Penn State, and if this is Joe's last game, you have to imagine that people are thinking about that. I think they're going to come out and play real well. I'm going to pick Penn State in a goofy game. Safeties, who knows what's going to happen. I think they're going to force Martinez to make some mistakes. I'll go 18-14.
Woo! That is weird. Mike?
Well, I tell you, this is really tough. I mean, I'm going to go. I thought I'd be the only guy picking Nebraska.
Yeah, you're never going to pick
Penn State. But I think it's going to be a close game. It's a defensive struggle on both sides of the ball. I think the key is going to be McGloin and how well he throws against this Nebraska defense. But I'm going to go along with Mark on this one. But I'm going to go 13, Penn State 13, Nebraska 10 in a low-scoring affair. Both real good defenses, and both offenses a little bit questionable.
Boy, that means it's me.
Brennan is lighting up so far.
I was trying to I thought I was going to be the only one picking Penn State. I think coming off the bye, they're going to have something to show here. I think they were okay against stopping a guy like Dan Person, Shieldhouse, and some of those guys that can do some different things. You had a 3-point edge, so I'm going to go Penn State 27-23. Does that make sense?
Well, I got Nebraska. I don't know what you're looking at me for.
That's right.
I have it.
That's all right. Go ahead. You
27.
That's your prediction.
So
You guys are fighting over
What's
half.
he doing? He's taking my same pick.
Is that what you had?
Both 4 points. Bro, I had 18-14.
Okay, then
you
go
can't change it.
27-24. That's what I had. That's what I had
Now-
originally.
Now you're the same as Mike.
I thought Neil picked.
You better go one way or the
My
other
pick
here,
is 27-24, Penn State.
Oh, my God.
That's all right.
One of you
Yeah.
guys is going to get a half. Two of you guys are going to get half a ball. Is what we're.
What was your first prediction?
27-23.
Hey,
I got
yeah,
you
well,
Penn
perfect.
State.
Well, I got 3,
We're
so
going
you're
like this.
squeezing me.
Two of you guys are going to
can
get a half
squeeze
a ball.
I feel like an orange getting squeezed.
That's it. We're out of time. We'll see you next week after the Nebraska game. Have a good night.
The Nitwits are brought to you by Irwin Financial, a firm foundation for your financial future. Coldwell Banker, no one will work harder to sell your home. By Doctors Howells and Reed, orthodontics for children and adults. By the bookstore in the Park Hills Plaza, featuring the area's most complete selection of books, DVDs, and magazines. By Fiore True Value on 6th Avenue, Altoona. Just ask rental. By Pacifico's Bakery, genuine Italian bread and rolls for your tailgating needs. By the Altoona Professional Hearing Aid Center, your hearing aid healthcare professional. By Monarch Cleaners, for all your cleaning needs. Your rehab choice, Health South Altoona. Ask for us by name. By J&P Auto, home of the $1,000 push, pull, or tow. By Courtesy Motors of Altoona, where courtesy means a great deal. By the Allegro, where fine cuisine is a way of life. By the easy-to-use Big Book. And by the Altoona Mirror, featuring Penn State game day every Friday. You can also see the NitWits on AltoonaMirror.com. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next week.